this Monday, September 22nd commission meeting for the City of St. Pete Beach. Please join me in the please stand up and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Commissioner Robinson?
Here.
Commissioner Ruznicki?
Here.
Commissioner Maldonado?
Here.
Vice Mayor Marriott?
Here.
And Mayor Petrilla.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, do we have any changes to the agenda?
Vice Mayor and City Commission, tonight I'd like to remove presentation A. We are rescheduling that to a future commission meeting. Also, if we could move 6A to occur immediately after 2D, wastewater inflow and infiltration updates, since they are both related to each other.
All right.
I have an item for discussion.
Sure.
Backfill.
All right, 7A will be backfill. Anything else? Nope. All right, do we have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
I make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Vice Mayor Marriott?
Yes.
Commissioner Robinson?
Yes.
Commissioner Ruznicki?
Yes.
Commissioner Maldonado?
Yes.
And Mayor Petrilla?
Yes.
The motion carries.
All right, and so I think we're starting off with a couple of presentations, right?
Correct.
Good evening, Laura Canary, Community Development Director. So tonight we're going to continue our hurricane recovery and preparedness effort update, and beginning with looking at historic designations to date, permit processing, demos, elevations. Then I'm going to hand it over to Camden again to talk a little bit about what Public Services is doing as it pertains to recovery and preparedness. And then we're going to talk about training and personnel and the Tampa Bay Coastal Master Plan. Beginning with historic designations, through the 19th of September, we've had 62 applications submitted, 49 approved, 9 are pending, and 4 have been withdrawn. For certificates of appropriateness, we've had 27 for demolitions. Of those, 27 have been approved, and there are none currently pending. When we talk about restoration and additions, and again, this is where any elevations would be captured, we have 8 applications submitted, 4 approved, 3 pending, and 1 has been withdrawn. There is 1 application that's a floodplain management FEMA variance in connection with a certificate of appropriateness, and this is pertaining to a historic home where a small addition of about 44 square foot was added, and the home is not being elevated post-storm. When we look at permit processing, through the 14th of September, we had 5,507 applications submitted. As you look at our daily average, again, we were very excited because we met that goal of 60 and then some the last 2 reports that we provided, and you'll see that numbers declined significantly. In talking with our team, it's really just a matter of looking at the intake looks a lot different now. So we have many less coming in, and it's more a matter of just processing those. Hence why you also see that yellow color going up, which we're very excited about. We're up to just over 1,000 that have been closed at 1,045. And again, just those continued challenges, just the back and forth and documentation. Really nothing has changed since we're just in a different kind of stage in the recovery and the permit processing right now. For demolitions, we've had 144 demo permit applications. 90 have been issued and 20 have actually closed. That average time has went down significantly. We're now averaging approximately 7 days to issue a demo permit. When we look at elevations, we've had 34 elevating structure permit applications. 15 of those have been issued. None have been closed to date so far. And again, similar with a 7-day average for issuance. Just a reminder, wanted to put the Elevate Florida information up on the screen. Again, if anyone has any questions, whether they've received correspondence or maybe haven't heard anything, we encourage you to reach directly out to Elevate Florida. I'm going to hand it over to Camden to talk a little bit about what Public Services is doing.
Thank you, Laura. For the record, Camden Mills, Public Services Director. So I'd like to give you a recovery update related to our utility systems and the cleaning and inspections that's ongoing. So for our wastewater system, we have a contract on tonight's agenda for system-wide cleaning and inspection. That's with Roland Incorporated. And then also internally with our city staff, we've been completing inspections and cleaning as well. And we've just recently completed Paso Grill area from 1st Avenue to 6th Avenue, including the manholes and the underground pipes. One of our goals as staff is to provide our commission with more updates regarding areas that have been completed and then areas that we look to address in the moving forward. And we plan to include those in our city manager's weekly operations report. And then related to our stormwater system, we had a request for proposal solicitation for a system-wide contract for that as well. That request for proposal closed on 9/10. We're now in the process of selecting that vendor through an evaluation committee, and we're targeting to bring that contract back to commission for approval on October 28th. Internally, our staff, again, has been working to clean this underground system, inspect it. Recently, we've had some more favorable tide conditions where we've had low enough tides where we can flush and clean some of the systems with the equipment that we have. Some areas that were recently completed were the Lido neighborhood, 55th Avenue, North Tessier Drive, Bay Street, and then East Vina Del Mar Boulevard. And then upcoming on our list is Paso Grill Way and 26th Avenue. These areas were selected based on frequency and severity from C-Click Fix reports, as well as staff reports when we're observing. And next, I'd like to get into hurricane preparedness. Part of the initiative of increasing our emergency preparedness procedures is our staff at the director level looks at these 7-day outlooks frequently when our fire chief sends these out. So these are just a few of the disturbances that are out in the Atlantic that we're tracking right now. First is Hurricane Gabriel, that's passing to the east. The swells are expected to impact the U.S. East Coast from North Carolina north, so we don't expect much impacts to our area from this storm. There's also a couple disturbances that are out in the Atlantic. Both of those are moving northwestward, and don't seem to propose an immediate threat to our area as those move across the Atlantic. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Laura. Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to talk a little bit about training. Staff continues to take the NIMS training and ICS training. We had during an all management meeting last week, we had FEMA grants management training, which was great to have that in Blue Sky during Blue Skies to really talk also about things that we can do just on a daily basis to kind of be in a position that when and if this ever happens again, we're kind of dotting our I's and crossing our T's. So that was very helpful information. And then the chief is taking his final class to receive an EOC manager designation, so that's very exciting. And then I'm also very excited to say that we have our deputy building official that started today. So we're very excited that this is the first time in years that we now are fully staffed as far as having deputy and a building official. So it's going to help us even more. And then when we talk about personnel, as we know, we issued the RFP for additional community development personnel during Blue Sky and Gray Sky Days. Well, this is something different. This is actually a county RFP that the county issued for very similar services. And so they've now selected, there's about 7 different firms on their list. And so what we've been looking at is, as a subsequent step, we'll basically be coming back to you to piggyback on that county contract to pick 1 or 2 or potentially a few of those other firms to, again, just kind of have them as a menu, if you will, so that we can tap into them on an as-needed basis. So we'll be taking that before you sometime in the near future. At this point, the county has just selected which firms they, are moving forward with. We had a meeting last week with representatives from the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council and the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission, and This is basically to talk about the Tampa Bay Coastal Master Plan, which is the first for Tampa Bay. So we've never had a coastal master plan. It's well overdue. It's going to be an exciting project, a long project. They're anticipating a 4-year time frame for the project. They received, I think it was about $2 million in funding to go towards the project at this point. So we're going to have them come back in early November, and they're going to give a brief overview to you guys to talk about what the plan is going to entail, and then make the ultimate decision if we want to be a partner or a collaborator. We know we want to be a partner or collaborator is just a little bit more involved. We anticipate that we'll probably be a collaborator, but again, we're going to have them come back on, I believe it's on the 3rd, to give that presentation and then give you all the opportunity to ask any questions that you have. But it's very exciting, and again, well overdue for Tampa Bay. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. But before I do that, because I did realize I had updated one slide and the update didn't go into this, I do want to just, for the benefit of the public, announce that we're going to be having a community development staff forum this Wednesday, the 24th, from 5:30 to 7 p.m. in Commission Chambers. This is going to be staff's opportunity to share our substantial damage administrative procedures plan. So this is really how we look at things, how we're doing damage assessment, our kind of internal operations, something that we would normally develop and have as it's our tool in our toolbox, but because of the importance that it has in the community and rebuilding, we really want to just give the community an opportunity to kind of hear from them and let us know, what they've ran into thus far, so that we can kind of tweak and, modify the plan accordingly. Once that's done, once we have that feedback, we will be bringing it back to you all for acceptance, not adoptance. Again, we want to have some flexibility in that plan so that if things change, whether it's at the state or the federal level or something that we just think we need to change, pretty rapidly, we want to be able to be nimble with that plan and again, be able to just react accordingly at that time. So I'm sorry the slide wasn't up there, but we do have that this coming Wednesday, 5:30 to 7 here in Chambers. That'll be happy to answer any questions.
Go ahead.
Have you considered changing the 9 to 1 hours for permit intake to just, because I've noticed it's a lot slower. There isn't the lines that we had before. Just curious if there's the opportunity to do normal business hours on the intake.
So we have not discussed changing it in recently. But we kind of decided that we were going to, based on the stage in the recovery that we were in, wait until we absolutely could confidently say that we think that we could probably tailor that back. And I think, to your point, I think we're probably at that point for sure. So it's definitely something that we can talk internally and with the city manager about.
Thank you.
Just for, if you know this off your head, maybe you don't. You mentioned there was 5,507 application or permits to say that have gone into the city in almost a year. I guess we're close to the year from the time of Helene. Do you know how many were the last year, just so that as a public they could, for us to hear, what's the difference in a typical year outside of a hurricane? How many applications go in a year versus what you've received this whole entire year?
I can get you, I'll bring back that information. The last time that I looked at it, it was over 3, almost 4 times the amount, but it's been probably about 4 or 5 months ago. So it was right when I got here when I looked at that. So I'll definitely bring that information back and show that. And I think too, when we come back, because again, with us, coming out of hurricane season, I think what we anticipate doing is still continuing to track this, but maybe not bringing it back to you as frequently. And so I anticipate there's some really good data there, and we've been trying to not change the way that we're presenting that to be consistent, but I do think there's some good metrics that we'll be able to kind of pull and show more year over year, or show you like where you really see that uptick and things like that. So that'll be a good thing to not only show how it looks during blue skies, but then also be able to even get into some of the trends that we saw within the recovery and kind of how that looked. Because hence, like the 20, going from the goal of the 60 down to 20, at first I was like, what happened? But it was really good news once you kind of dug a little deeper.
But then also, because even though the applications might start reducing, you still have open permits, right? So those still have to be serviced, right? That you still have people and you have to go out and inspect,
You're still going to have questions. People might do a change order on their plans or what they're doing in their home. So they're not closed, right? So that's still a lot of work, right, for a city. So just to know, like, staffing-wise, is it still, I mean, I would not say reduced, right? Because you still have to manage all these permits that are still open or applications that are still being processed as well. So that would be good information too, because it's almost like you're still at the beginning and have received, but they're not all closed. So it's just possibly 4,000. I don't know how many have closed of the 4,000 versus how many are still out there that are still working on it. Because like you mentioned, there's been demolition permits, but there might not be, they've been requested, but they haven't been activated, right? So no one has moved forward. So you'll still have a lot of work, in the coming year. So just interested to know, like, what the need of the city is. And then a question, this would be a Camden question, on the time frame that you were mentioning about the cleaning of the stormwater drains. You mentioned Paso Grill from 1st to 6th Avenue that had been complete, and I hate to say completed, but at least looked at or cleaned. And I know you're basing it off of the C-Click fix, but I know even in District 3 there's been a lot, and a lot of questions from people in my district or residents saying, why haven't they come to clean this? There's probably sand in there, and there's probably something in there that's not letting it drain, and I'm sure it's going on citywide. But how long did it take to do from 1st to 6th? And this is just for kind of figuring out what the time frame is for it to progress all the way down to the rest of the city, or is there a way that, that way people will know, hey, we are in the process, but it's kind of slowly. Actually, I shouldn't say slowly. I don't know if it's slowly, how long it took to do just those avenues.
Thank you. Yes, we would like it to be much faster than it is, of course. Some measurements that we've taken recently, because we would like to identify like what that performance metric would look like, what can we expect to complete in a period of time. For instance, the stormwater recently completed at the Lido neighborhood, 55th Avenue, and the North Tessier Drive. That included about 29 or 27 different assets as far as, the gravity pipes, the inlets, and the outfalls. And it took us 27 assets, and it took us about 29 crew days. So if you break that down, it's about one area a day is what we're able to service, given that if the tide conditions are favorable.
Like a street or?
A street, yes, yep.
Okay. So about a month maybe for like a neighborhood?
Correct. And that's with the city's in-house equipment. When we contract this out and then have more available resources, we'll expect to speed that process up.
Okay, thank you.
So that was going to lead into how much in the way of linear feet have we accomplished so far?
As far as overall percentage, I'd have to come back and give that number.
Okay, because I think we were at 2,700 before.
I'd have to come and
the last report on that. I'd be interested to know where we're at.
Okay.
And also, I know that the city does have a stormwater master plan, and they do have critical areas. Why are we not servicing those critical ones?
We do. We take in conjunction of critical areas that our staff is aware with, and also the C-Click fix.
Okay, because I know that there is a stormwater master plan, or there has been one with critical areas on it.
And that's a good point too, and especially after we have heavy rain events, those are the first areas that we go in and go look at.
And they're actually numbered as critical as to their priority. So I would like to see that being definitely part of the mix. And then I had another question for Laura.
Camden, can I just ask that we get more pre-notice on where we're going to be getting service for the cleaning and inspections? I was pretty surprised to see them out in Vina today. I'm happy to see them, but at times when folks are getting work done, it would be nice to know in advance. So.
Yes, sir. That's one of the goals internally we're working towards is better structure of reporting what's been cleaned as well as where we plan to go to next.
Thank you.
I just had a question in regards to, the letter that went out about people having, not responded, having any permits. Where are we at on that in response to that, as well as after the fact permits? How are we How are we moving forward? Are we at a good pace? How are we doing on that?
No, we're a little delayed. We have not gotten that letter out yet. That letter has not been sent out yet.
There was a secondary letter going out,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that has not gone out.
No, it hasn't.
And for those that did respond and did put in permits, are those progressing well? And
So of the first batch, we had about, it was like 200 of the 800 that we kind of narrowed it down. And so we'll be casting the net wide again when we send this next letter. And really, it's just been a matter, we have the letter drafted, and it's really just a matter of going back through each of them and adding the more specific information to the properties. And so it's been a little bit timely. We're very hopeful in talking to the team now that we're going to have closer to a full team on the building and permitting side, that we'll be able to kind of assess who's working on what to be able to get those letters out. But part of it has been that there's just been, a lot of, we're working with the ones that have permits, and focusing heavily on those as our.
And I would just like to say, unfortunately, I won't be able to attend the community meeting on Wednesday, but I would like to be on the record for saying, I would like to see us, for future, if this does ever happen again, that we look at after the fact permits immediately. That is a consideration to be done, so that we are not behind the 8 ball like we have been, and that people can get the work done. And I had mentioned that early on in this whole process, and it kind of got nixed from the commission and everybody, so.
We'll definitely circulate the draft plan before it's going back to you, and I think that you'll be really excited to see in there that there is, the building official has come up with a method to be able to have placards already ready beforehand that basically we can put on the properties. And it's essentially issuing that permit, and then if you end up not needing it and you end up, you can just close it, no penalty, but it's going to be a really proactive way to then just everybody has what they need on day 3 and to begin doing whatever work necessary. So we did hear you loud and clear, and we incorporated that into this draft. Again, the draft, we anticipate that it's going to be tweaked and, finessed probably continuously.
It's going to have to be.
Yes, exactly.
And where are we at on the new FEMA letter? I mean, what is what are we looking at for, a method to handle that, as far as what we would look to have people provide? My advice would be everybody to take pictures of what you have now once you do your repairs as well. Because I don't believe an actual getting another appraisal, an ACV appraisal, that's only good for how long? Like as an example, somebody's ACV appraisal that they got last year pre-storm, how long is that good for? In light of this 2025 new FEMA letter. Am I able to use that again, or am I looking at having to get a new one? And then we have a lot of people with sales and other things going on, so that, you've got new people coming in and buying. So I'm just trying to get a handle on that and how to advise people what to do and be prepared for it, especially in light of this new letter.
And so I know we're going to be touching on that a little bit in the presentation on Wednesday, as far as depending on where you're at and what events have occurred, which letter to use. But then the second part of that, of course, is the appraisal part, because we know that there were major concerns with individuals that got the private appraisal, and then what was in, say, even the tidal basin bad data was very comparable, maybe not to the sense, but I mean very comparable. That why would you have, why would you want to go through the cost and time for an appraisal? So one of the things that the city manager has asked us to do is to really get exactly the correct guidance and guidelines as far as how much flexibility we have with regard to the appraisal and what we're looking at. Different from the FEMA letter, because we get it, it's on the property card, it's the county, but what can we consider, for that appraisal? And our understanding so far is that, we may have some flexibility. I don't want to misspeak. We may have some flexibility, but whatever we end up doing, of course, has to be that method and consistent throughout. So it's determining, but we know that there's probably definitely a better way and methodology than what we had in place, or the parameters that we were working within this last time. So I hope that we'll have a little bit more detailed information to go in tandem with that on Wednesday, but if we don't, we'll be able to at least communicate to the public that we're continuing to figure that out, and that'll be, again, incorporated into our plan.
And I would question or want to know what are our acceptable cost sources. Because that had been a question that took forever to get answered. Again, I know everything is new. This was a new experience for everybody, but it would be something that I think we should have at hand and be able to advise. Last time it was ACV from an appraiser, and it went from that to a local builder cost. And now we're talking potentially Forerunner, right? What Forerunner is projecting. So just would like to be able to advise people what those cost sources are available. Because there's a big difference between a local builder and, I'm sure, Forerunner.
And I think that I would just ask, because I would believe that we want to be as flexible as we can as long as we're in compliance with FEMA.
Right. Thank you.
Mayor, do you have any questions?
I do not.
Okay. Thank you, Laura. All right, and so I think next we have amendments to regulations for substantial improvement. Brandon.
Good evening, Brandon Berry, planner. This is a follow-up to a discussion item that was held at the last City Commission meeting, talking about front yard stair encroachment. This all ties in with elevation and reconstruction of single-family homes above the floodplain, not new from the ground up development, but those projects where the living level is being elevated generally in the same footprint of the home. There were a few other items that we've noticed over the last year of reviewing these permits we also wanted to bring forward to you under this cover. So prior to this year, we received an average of one of these type of permits per year. Since January 1st, we've received 35 requests. We know that there are dozens more queued up to be submitted for permitting. Late last year, the City Commission recognized that these permits would be coming down the pike, and they amended the Land Development Code to allow for in-place elevation of residences, even when they're non-compliant with the setbacks, without needing to go forward for a variance. But there wasn't any supplemental criteria addressed. The requirements for elevation of equipment and stair encroachments and so on more or less stayed the same. Based on the last meeting, we were directed to look at these projects where the living level is being elevated either through actual elevation of the existing living level above the floodplain or reconstruction of that living level on top of the existing structure and conversion of that ground level to parking, storage, and access, which are treated the same under the zoning code. So the existing standard on the left here shows a home that is being elevated in place or reconstructed where the existing home's front setback is non-conforming to the setback requirement in place today. So in this example, the home has a 12-foot front setback. It has a jog, and the front entry is at that jog, approximately 20 feet back from the front property line. Under the current code requirement, the stairs could not encroach any closer than the 17 feet that is provided for in the code. despite the fact that the stairs as shown would encroach no closer to the front property line than the front of the building as it exists today. One of the options staff has explored, and one of the options that we've seen, and I'll show some examples in a moment, would be allowing stairs to encroach no closer than the established existing front setback of the residence. Another example you can see on the left where the front door is at the existing established front of the structure. Again, this is a structure that does encroach into the required front setback. Under the zoning code as it exists today, the home can be elevated in place, but stairs cannot encroach into the required front setback without a variance. The proposed standard would allow a minor incidental extension of stairs into the front setback. We were evaluating a potential 10-foot encroachment. That's usually within our land development code. The limits of staff approval powers is about a 10-foot setback from the front property line, which is where that came from. It would also accommodate for those structures that were built compliant with the setback regulations at 20 feet to allow 2 rungs of stairs. We have heard from homeowners, from contractors that to ease in access, having those stairs that aren't 15, 17 feet, or 15 to 17 stairs in length, having a landing that they can rest on the descent or ascent to the front door is something that many homeowners want to undertake, and that would accommodate that based on the Florida Building Code. Florida Building Code requires about a 7-foot encroachment to have 2 runs of stairs parallel with the front of the residence. So here's some recent examples. This is one that went to the Board of Adjustment late last month. This shows an encroachment. The residence is existing, it's being elevated in place. There was a landing set into the residence that was made a balcony. The applicant was seeking to have a 2-level rung of stairs encroach into the required front setback. Now, this encroachment was proposed to be less than 10 feet, so if a 10-foot standard were to be applied, there would still be a variance required for this arrangement, but it does show an incidental extension that would accommodate those two rungs of stairs. And here's the front of the structure showing how that would look. Here's another example. This one proposed a staircase at 16 feet from the front setback, front property line. The existing front of the residence, the garage, which is being elevated in place, the garage, I believe, is being turned into living space. Garage below is being reestablished. This residence has an existing front setback of 16 feet. They were proposing stairs that would also meet a 16-foot front setback. So based on that first proposal, this would be permitted by right. They could run out stairs to the existing established front setback of the home that is being retained. And here's showing how that would look from the front elevation. Here's another example going back to that first option that was proposed. These stairs encroach no closer than the existing retained front setback of the home. In this case, the home is set much closer to the front property line, 8.3 feet. But again, those stairs, the front access is recessed from that front of the structure. They would encroach no closer to the front property line based on that first option. This would also be permitted without need of a variance. And this is showing another option, went to the Board of Adjustment last month. This was a brand new development, and this is not something that we had proposed to look at under this scope, but just showing that this type of staircase encroachment would not be allowed for new developments. That's showing this here. This is a newly developed home. Those stair encroachments would not be permitted under this scope unless we're directed otherwise. So there were some additional considerations. We did bring these up with the planning board last week at their meeting, looking into the maximum width of the landing at the front of the structure. A landing needs to be at least 3 feet deep to meet the Florida Building Code for a residential single-family home. It needs to be at least as wide as the doors at the front of the structure. We were looking at potentially limiting that landing to prevent it from becoming a significant additional mass. I believe this was discussed by the commission at the last meeting, not having it as a significant balcony or deck feature, just allowing for that incidental access that would be required to get up to the new living level from the outside of the structure. As I mentioned before, Florida Building Code has fairly limited requirements for the width of those landings at the top of stairs. Our code currently does not allow for any kind of independent roof overhangs. We do allow for stairs to be covered by incidental extension of the primary roof eaves. So if the eave overhangs the stairs, that's fine. They don't have to modify or cut it back, but it would not be able to be further extended out and become another mass at the front of the structure. We had discussed with the planning board whether there should be some kind of a limitation on exterior stairs when interior stairs are accommodated in the structure. There seemed to be consensus that having a front staircase, an incidental extension, is something that is reasonable. It was conveyed that it was unreasonable to expect guests and deliveries to come through a garage entrance at this interior of the home. There were a few other items that we wanted to address in tandem with this. The first is allowing for in-place elevation of non-conforming permitted ancillary equipment. We typically see condensers and generators that fall under that umbrella, located within the required side yard setback when a home is substantially improved. So this would effectively just allow equipment to be elevated in place to match the floodplain requirement on that side of the home. Late last year, we did amend our code to allow for those homes that were not substantially damaged but still have to comply with that Florida Building Code requirement. We'll talk about that ordinance later tonight, to elevate their equipment in place. But this would allow for those homes that are being elevated in place to also bring the equipment up in its current location. We've discussed increasing shed square footage from 80 square feet to 120 square feet. This has been a recurring request from homeowners. The reason why it's brought up under this scope is because whenever a home is substantially improved, all the accessory structures on the lot need to be brought into compliance with the current code requirements. We've seen many sheds that are slightly over 80 square feet. They're required to be removed or pursue a variance. So this is something we wanted to bring up for consideration under this scope. It can be addressed further down the line or not at all. We just wanted to address it because it's a recurring issue that we see with these permits. And then we have also discussed allowing a one-time exemption for pools, gazebos, and deck covers to remain in required setbacks when the home only is substantially improved. So when it's elevated in place or converted and reconstructed. This would not apply to structures crossing property lines or in easements. It would also not apply to those structures that were substantially damaged, taken down post-storm, and then reconstructed. These would largely be permissions for those homeowners who are voluntarily elevating their home. They have an existing pool, gazebo, or deck cover that is in a required setback. Just like sheds, they would be required to comply with the current code. Under this exemption, they would be able to keep that structure through the elevation. Should it be damaged in the future, should it be replaced, it would need to comply with the setback requirements at that time. We did take this to planning board last Monday. There was support for a few of these items, and there were some split opinions on others. The first was allowing for front yard stair encroachment as proposed. That did receive board's support. They made some great recommendations. The first is that the base of the stairs should be open when they encroach in the required yards. Having those breakaway stairs, again, going back to the massing and the visual impact of these stair encroachments, having that base of stairs open, as you saw on many of the examples I presented. And that the front landing should be limited to the necessary size to allow access, but not turn it into a new balcony or deck feature. It should be limited to the opening requirements under the Florida Building Code. There was support for allowing in-place elevation of exterior equipment when they exist inside setbacks, and allowing pools specifically in required setbacks to remain following substantial improvement. Again, that's not a significant visual encroachment, allowing those to remain at the setback that they currently possess. There were more split opinions on allowing for larger sheds. One opinion that was expressed was a concern regarding unsecured sheds during storms. As this is a more permissive standard, a potential solution to that would be to allow those sheds to remain, but they would need to meet the hurricane tie-down requirements and allow them to remain should they be made compliant with the current building code tie-down requirements. And then there were split opinions on allowing gazebo and deck covers to remain in required setbacks following substantial improvement. There was more of a visual concern in that regard than there was for pools. So we're seeking really your input tonight on those 4 items. We don't have any ordinance to present to you. This is something we plan to take back, draft code language, take it forward to the planning board, and then bring back to the city commission at a future meeting. And again, just to go to those 4 items, allowing stairs to encroach during elevation, That would be to potentially the existing non-conforming front setback of the residence is being retained, or potentially no less than 10 feet from the front property line, provided that they also encroach no more than 7 feet into the required front yard. Allowing in-place elevation of equipment during substantial improvement, allowing gazebos, deck covers, and/or pools to remain when the primary residence is substantially improved, and increasing shed size from 80 to 120 square feet. As I mentioned, just seeking your input tonight, and we will draft language to bring back.
Thanks, Brandon. Questions? Commissioner Robinson?
I'll just do some comments. Shed-wise, if you're elevating and now you have all this open space underneath, why do you need bigger shed? I'm just going to ask that rhetorical question.
I think it comes from if you have if you're elevating a relatively small house, and now you have parking under your house.
Right, but you're also allowed to have storage underneath your house as well.
Right, but it may not be closed-in storage. You know, like you could elevate your house, you could.
Kind of closed-in storage, I believe that.
I think it could be a cost issue. You know, like what does the builder charge you to enclose your downstairs like a garage versus what does it cost to get a 10 by 12 shed put in your backyard that you can put your lawnmower in? And if you have a 1,000 square foot house,
right, but an 8 by 10 shed you can get your lawnmower in as well. I mean, you're talking 10 by 12 in a small home. That's the size of a bedroom. Mm-hmm. That's at least the size of my kitchen. So I would agree with, I just don't see the need on the shed aspect, especially on an elevation type of scenario. I'm just putting my 2 cents in. I thought, though, when we were talking about the non-conforming, we originally started this whole conversation, I thought was in regards to new construction, not necessarily non-conforming as far as staircase and the setbacks with that. And so this is only drafted, as I see it, is only for non-conforming elevations, correct?
That's what we addressed today, and all those, with the exception of the last example that we showed, was all existing construction that's being elevated. But if that's something the commission would like us to look into, we'd be happy to do so.
Because my concern is too that, you know, it's an opportunity right now with a lot of current residents rebuilding their homes to make them more resilient. And, you know, what are we looking at here? You know, is there any grace we can give for the staircases? I like the idea of it being open at the bottom. That makes it more airy. It doesn't look as, you know, closed in. The idea with, you know, you can't extend the roof line other than what it is, and that makes sense. I will say the landing, a 3-foot landing, is tiny. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not even an OSHA standard for people in my business to be on. You know, 3 foot by 3 foot is tiny. I mean, you can't get your groceries up there without wanting to fall backwards. I would say look at that again. Okay. You know, at least 3 by 5. I mean, there's got to be something. Your door's going to open up, and you've got a 36-inch front door. You have to stand on the stair behind you to open it up. I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So I think that needs some work on the landing side of that. And again, I would look for something for whether this be new construction on current owners or what, but I just think there should be a little bit of grace on you know, new construction for current owners that were hit with the hurricane.
Okay.
I don't know if there's a way to do that. If that's called discrimination on buyers, I'm not sure. But I just think, you know, there's a lot of old codes that we have in here that aren't as functional as they were. You know, I'm not looking to do something where we have 0 setbacks or anything like that, but a staircase is something that's needed for a home. I mean, for sure. And actually having a landing, because in my old age, I know I'm going to need the landing. I currently need it, landing to stop somewhere and rest or put stuff down and move on up. Going straight up would be. Mm-hmm. I do that in other things, so don't really like that. Stadiums and stuff.
And just because you're mentioning landings, where does the 3x3 come from? Is that current code for landings?
So the approach of a landing needs to be at least the width of the stairs, which is 3 feet. And I spoke with the building official just before this meeting. That's a minimum. That's not a,
It's
if we
not-
could allow for an additional encroachment, that's just the absolute minimum we could require.
That's a Florida building code requirement?
Yes, it is.
So just a minimum, so they could still request it for it to be wider. right?
Correct, and this would only be, and I will say the majority of these 35 permits that we've reviewed so far, they completely comply with the setbacks, or they provided stairs on the side or interior, and there haven't been any encroachment issues. I don't think we can address every single situation with this code, but what was brought up where we have those examples, this would be a benefit to those, so.
And all those examples that you brought up are elevating current homes, not, except I think you said one, right? That's a new construction.
I did give an example of new construction. That wasn't something I was directly addressing through the presentation, but we can certainly look at it.
So, and just so that I can get it right from the commission standpoint, I thought we were talking about just elevating homes, not those who are demolishing and building new home. Like someone, to me, building a new home, if they require a variance, would have to go to the Board of Adjustment, right? Like, that's a different scenario, like that home did, that was just a partial part of that staircase that was in the setback. It wasn't the whole staircase because of the position of that lot being, I guess that's a cul-de-sac by the shape of what it looked like. So in those cases, because it's so specific, you need to be able to talk to a board about it, right? If you just had a blanket ordinance that said any elevations go up, that I think it could become a problem for the neighbor, right? If we don't let the Board of Adjustment, look at what they are. But for those that are there already, if it's just the staircase, just to elevate your home,
We're talking the front of the house, correct?
Pardon?
Talking the front of the house,
Correct.
not a side,
Right.
anything in the side setbacks.
Just
We're
the
talking
front.
just the front. So I'm not sure how that interferes with the neighbors.
For the new
so-
home?
So
Well,
just
it
saying.
depends on where your home is. Like, for example, where I live, water is across the street. So that becomes a visual impairment for a neighbor, right? If I'm staring at the staircase of my neighbor from my home, I mean, I could see, water, basically, but if from side to side, so it depends, that's why you ask for variances, because then your neighbor might support or not support and give their side. So that's why I mentioned that, because it could happen depending on the home, where it's located. Anyways, that was just one of the things that, there's some that I think that I don't know, like, what could be a negative? I guess that's my question. Have we thought through what could be the negative of doing this?
So I think for those, and that was part of the basis for just assigning that 10-foot front setback. We have that standard elsewhere in our code. That's typically the limit where a board or some other entity needs to get involved. For example, we have a front yard averaging standard for those lots that were built largely before zoning regulations in our city, where they might have a 12-foot front setback. Someone building new can use that front yard average, but no closer than 10 feet. In some cases, we have easements. In some cases, we have other improvements. Not that we have a lot of right-of-way acquisition here, but things like that tend to come into play when you have those improvements and potential future sidewalks and so on that would be inhibited by allowing a setback less than that.
Right, so it could be right into the right-of-way. I mean, I think of in some of the Dunn subdivision, they don't have sidewalks, right? But
Right.
there was air of their use, there were going to be, and then now they're not. But I would say that would probably be the only thing that you would think of could be negative.
And that would be the major impact. Visual impairment is the other. I will say in most neighborhoods in the city outside of Paso Grill, typically the right-of-way from curb edge to the property line is anywhere between 13 and 18 feet. That's a standard. So even a 10-foot front setback is, in most cases, 25 feet away from the curb. So it is fairly far away. Paso Grill is a little bit different. It's more like 10 in most cases, so it's a little bit closer. But just there is a point where there's such an encroachment into the front yard that it does start to become a visual impairment and just look out of character for the neighborhood.
Neighborhood.
Mhm.
So its potential could happen to a neighborhood if many homes are doing this.
Especially with the significant encroachment, I think that one additional run of stairs, especially because of them functioning for descent, it's not going to have a significant visual impact, but going with maybe a 5-foot setback could in certain situations.
And then another, last, I think, question. For the non-conforming that you showed plan, because I know I've seen some people who have been elevating their home to have the garage, which is a typical style in some neighborhoods, that have the garage like that L shape, let's just say. By saying the staircase only, but they have, let's say, the space for, you'll get to it, the space for a terrace or deck up on the top, because of the way, not that one, like one, your very beginning, like the ones that you kind of made yourself, I know, not actual plans, so if you keep going back. Yeah, there you go. Like, there's, like, you see how they're, and I don't know, I know you don't have numbers on this, it's not actual plans, but where you see the wider in front of the door, like if somebody wanted to have a deck from the wall all the way to the end of the home, can they still request it from the Board of Adjustment?
Yes, I don't think we're looking at closing any variance pathways with this. This would just be to allow for some administrative exception to what we currently have in the code, but I don't think we're proposing any prohibitions on variances, at least at this stage.
Okay. Because I think I've seen a couple homes right now that have gone up to have that kind of design, and they do have, or they are adding a deck, basically, on that inside part, you
Well,
know.
they may be back
'Cause
far
of-
enough that they have
No,
plenty.
I'm
of
saying like
room
from,
back, but
I know
yeah.
you all can't see because I'm pointing to my screen, but just from that side all the way over, you know. Okay. Thank you.
I think that's behind the setback, the 17. I can't see what you're pointing at, but
Yes, in that one, because that's that L shape. But if there's another one, let's say that goes in further, but we would just say no, they have to just be, it would have to be in the, well, no, that, my question is then it would still go to the Board of Adjustment, right? If it was not within the 17, depending on the zone?
That's correct. Under the current code, any landing or staircase needs to be within that 17-foot setback. So in this case, the landing does meet the 17. That part of it's fine, but you can't get down from there. So
Right,
the
exactly.
stairs that extend. Mhm.
Right. Because they could still design it the other way, too. It doesn't have to be straight out towards the street.
Correct, yes.
Thanks, Brandon. I have a couple comments as well. I think that, I think this is great, and great that you guys put this together so quickly. I think that the planning board made some good comments about the desirability of having a staircase on the front of your house, both for, you know, welcomingness of the neighborhood and safety for fire response and those sorts of things. And so I think that what you guys have proposed for the elevating of existing houses, I think is probably spot on. I agree with Commissioner Robinson that I think there's a lot of reasons to look at extending that to new construction as well. And I think I look at that through the lens of District 1, where so many of the lots are small, and your neighborhood as well, where you know, you can say that, you know, you can design a house to fit the setbacks, and if you want something different, you can ask for a variance, but the Board of Adjustment isn't supposed to consider financial reasons for giving somebody a variance. But I think that there's a lot of lots in this city where people would be in a position where they'd go, well, I probably could build a new resilient house on stilts if I can build a modular house or something like this. But one of those doesn't come in a dimension that fits on my lot with stairs. But I can't get a variance because the Board of Adjustment isn't allowed to use financial considerations for giving a variance. And so then they're like, well, I guess I can't have a new house. And so, you know, I think that 10-foot front setback for stairs, you know, and if we're real concerned about massing and sizes of house and that sort of thing, I don't know if there's some way to, you know,
Allow a percentage, maybe.
yeah, percentage or let people have an extra 5 feet into the front setback if they're giving up 5 feet on the sides, or, you know, there may be some creative way to extend that to new construction. you know, for people who aren't going to be able to get a variance because financial concerns can't be used. I think that the in-place elevation of exterior equipment makes all the sense in the world. For me, I think allowing larger sheds it seems totally reasonable. I mean, I don't think it's our business to tell people how much stuff they should or shouldn't have.
Agreed.
I think most of us probably just lost all of our stuff and are hesitant to get any more stuff. But if somebody wants you know, if they feel like they need a shed, I don't know that we should be telling them they shouldn't. And then similarly on the allowing existing structures that are non-conforming to stay, I think that also makes sense. I think that that's probably been really hard for some folks who have, you know, come to the city with plans to elevate their house and then to be told like, wow, that's awesome. We'd love for you to make this more resilient. But now you have to tear down your gazebo and fill in your pool. Yeah. So I think those are really common sense, logical things to do. So I think those are great ideas. Mayor, did you have anything to add?
I am in agreement with the staff's recommendation on the setbacks with the stairs.
Thank you.
I would say on the new construction side, there's a lot more, since you're building from scratch, you certainly have a lot more flexibility in designing something that fits within the setbacks. I think where the issues have come up with the new construction is when you have, for example, with the second example and the third example and the fourth example, those odd shaped lots that you have in many of the cul-de-sac properties, Lavina Del Mar, Bahia Shores, 55th, 64th, up and down Bay Boulevard, where you have those odd-shaped lots. That's where you run into issues because, so there may be something that needs to be looked at is, you know, what happens with those odd-shaped lots? Because a lot of times between all the setbacks, you're very limited in what you can build new.
Thank you.
Anybody else have anything to add?
I would just add that we're not going to be able to cover every situation, but the key takeaway is that variances could still be required. So that gives us a little bit of latitude, and it certainly favors the residents. So I agree with the city staff's recommendations on moving forward with this. Thank you.
Thanks, Brandon.
Great, thank you all.
And did that give you adequate information,
It
what
did.
you need? Okay.
Yes,
Perfect.
thank you.
Vice Mayor might not have given me adequate information. I'm not sure I have majority on new construction. I just wanted to see, do you want us to bring back ideas on new construction?
I would think so. A lot of it, I would agree on odd shape. There are a lot of odd shaped lots in here.
Okay.
In our city, so maybe it's something inherent to that. And like, you know, anything pie shaped, because I know that on a pie shape or corner, you're sitting here looking at, especially on a corner, you've got two easements. And so you have that, and as well as on a pie shape, you've got half of it may be within the setback, and the other half may not be. So yeah, I would say I would be in agreement looking at those.
Okay, thank you. Oh,
Would it help to look through zones by any chance, like neighborhoods, like the way that they're designed? Just thinking about the negative that you're saying, like I don't think it's going to happen, but let's just say like Gulf Winds redesign, right? If people were too close to what the potential spend on a sidewalk or something, you know, is it going to mess it up? You know, like, I don't know every home there, you know, but should we be looking at the zone or, you know, or like you said, maybe District 1 has a lot of smaller lots. You know, in the new construction, if you do it by percentage, you probably could see it. You know, like Paso Grill looks very different than another neighborhood in our city. So maybe we should look at them as a zone too and see, you know, what's District 1 suffering more from, or 2, and it might help. Like the ones that we're saying, the bays, it has a lot of cul-de-sacs. We don't have that in the Don Cesar. There's no cul-de-sacs, but some neighborhoods that do, and how that would look like.
Understood.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so I think we're on to our wastewater inflow and infiltration.
Good evening. For the record, Camden Mills, Public Services Director. Appreciate the opportunity this evening to give you an update on our wastewater utility system and our inflow and infiltration. At our September 8th commission meeting, our city manager gave a report that St. Petersburg, the city of St. Petersburg, has observed elevated chloride levels from saltwater intrusion into our wastewater system. So we wanted to come back and provide you a more comprehensive overview related to that report in the essence of transparency. So first, to give you a brief background on the wastewater system in St. Pete Beach, the system was constructed from 1954 to 1957, and a large majority of the original infrastructure from that project is still currently in place today. The allocated wastewater flows that we send to the city of St. Petersburg, on average, has been about 2.62 million gallons per day. And as I mentioned, all of that is conveyed over to the City of St. Petersburg Northwest Water Reclamation Facility. It is important to note that we currently do not have a full extent of the condition of our private sewer lateral lines that tie into our public system. So what is inflow and infiltration? I&I is the process of groundwater or other water sources other than domestic wastewater entering our sanitary sewer system. I&I can cause dilution in our sanitary sewers, which can decrease the efficiency of treatment and also could increase the volumes to exceed our design capacity. The picture shown on this slide here is a before and after of a manhole structure. So on the left is an old brick manhole structure, and then on the right is the replacement structure, which is your typical concrete precast structure. It's important to note that an increased water table creates higher rates of infiltration into the cracks in pipes and the voids in the manholes, and greater storm surges result in an increased flooding and inflow into our sanitary sewer system. Back in 2016, the city inspected our wastewater collection system in order to identify repairs. And then in 2017, we hired an engineer to prepare an inflow and infiltration report, which was completed to assist the city with prioritizing those identified repairs. The results of that 2017 I&I report showed about 62% of the city's wastewater conveyance system, so our underground gravity pipes, required rehabilitation. This image you see here is a heat map of some of the specific pipeline point repairs that were identified in that 2017 I&I report. In total, about 25% of the wastewater system requires those specific point repairs. So what a point repair is, it's either a structural replacement of the pipe where we excavate and replace in that specific location, or a maintenance point repair where we remove roots or some grease deposits that are preventing that conveyance from functioning properly. And also evaluating that pipes, and separate from those structural pipe point repairs, is pipe lining. This is another method of repair where we install a liner inside those existing pipes to shore up that system and extend the useful life. That 2017 report showed about 42% of the wastewater system's gravity pipes required pipe lining. In addition to the pipe point repairs and the pipe lining, the 2017 report also identified our manholes and manholes that needed to be rehabilitated. About 59% of our wastewater system manholes required rehabilitation. At the time the report was published in 2017, we evaluated 815 manhole structures. Since that time, we have found additional manhole structures, and our current asset inventory that we have in GIS has 864 manhole structures. And here is a heat map of those manhole repairs proposed in that 2017 report. Again, about 59% of our wastewater system manhole require rehabilitation. Here is a summary of estimated costs and of the recommended repairs from that 2017 report, split between the pipeline point repairs, the pipe lining, and the manhole rehab. In total, over a 5-year period, that 2017 report recommended over $5.8 million of improvements in order to bring our system into compliance with industry standards. Changes were made to that previous manhole report in 2021 to capture additional priorities. And in 2023, we issued an asset management plan that relooked at our I&I situation since it was last evaluated in 2017 and proposed a plan forward. In that 2023 report, the 5-year total for recommended investment in order to address I&I in our wastewater system was about $3.1 million. And this slide here just shows a comparison over the years from when we initially started this I&I program with that report in 2017, carried through today in 2025. So the column labeled I&I investment, those are the actual dollar figures that the city has spent on improvements, whether that's point repairs, pipe lining, or manhole rehab and replacements. So in total, since that 2017 report was issued, the city has invested about $5.2 million into addressing our I&I. And in this middle column where it shows estimated cost, these are the recommended investments and costs associated with those 2 reports that were previously done. So you see we have the years from 2017 to 2021 associated with that 2017 report, and then in 23, 24, and 25 recommended from that 2023 asset management plan update. And total between those 2 reports, they recommended about $7.9 million of improvements to address our I&I. And in the column on the far right is just a running cumulative total of showing what the difference is in the I&I investment versus those estimated costs from that report. So when you look at that cumulative running total, between 2017 and 2025, we're about $2.7 million short of our investment compared to what was recommended in those reports. So as we look at our I&I program and how this impacts our city, it's important to look at our wholesale wastewater service agreement with the City of St. Petersburg. City of St. Petersburg maintains our wastewater. They receive and treat the city's wastewater. And we have an agreement in place with them for an established wastewater flow rate of 2.95 million gallons per day on average. It's important to note we also have a future allocation of 3.15 million gallons per day, and that's based on permitted design capacity that hasn't been allocated yet. And in City of St. Petersburg Code of Ordinances, Section 27/307, they speak to specific limitations regarding the local limits on wastewater strengths and the treatment capacity within that wastewater that we're sending them. Specifically to saltwater intrusion, which is our main focus of our I&I, is the pollutant of chloride. And that Code of Ordinances that City of St. Petersburg establishes has a concentration level of 1,350 milligrams per liter. Average daily limit of chloride being measured allowable in the wastewater that we send them. This graph here just shows a monthly average of flow in million gallons per day from August 2024 to August 2025 relative to our currently reserved capacity of 2.95 million gallons per day. So that 2.95 is that red line across the chart. And then our monthly averages are those fluctuating bars there. And as you can see, during our typical rainy months is when we have higher flows into our system. That can be attributed to the high tides. That's increasing the pressure underground and that salty groundwater getting into our system, as well as storm surges from events that we've had here recently. So you can see in those typical rainy months, we exceed that allocated reserve capacity, but then on our drier months, that we are below that capacity. So on an annual average limit, we are operating within our established capacity. And then this next chart here, this shows a historical flow that we send to St. Petersburg over an annual basis from 2015 through 2025. So as you can see here, in about 2021 is when our chloride concentration limits exceeded that limit of 1,350 milligram per liter established by the city of St. Petersburg in our contract with them. It's important to note that our flows in 2025 significantly decreased post-hurricane, so it is expected that chloride concentration levels would increase since there's a reduced flow into the system that isn't diluting that saltwater I&I. So a better reference point than 25 would probably be tracking back to 2023 when we were operating on that 2.6 million gallon per day flow and seeing the elevated chloride levels there. So in summary, the main issues with our I&I is not so much of a volume or capacity issue, but more of a condition of our system underground and how it can function. It's important to note that many days, the City of St. Petersburg Northwest plant is not able to produce reclaimed water. So when we send our wastewater to the City of St. Petersburg, they treat that and distribute that out to their customers as reclaimed water. So when we are exceeding those limits, it puts a burden on them to be able to provide that reclaimed water to their customers. And this chart here just shows a timeline of recent coordination with the City of St. Petersburg. Based on conversations with staff here at St. Pete Beach, it's my understanding that discussions of the elevated chloride levels started with city staff before November of 2023. An important date was on January 5th of 2024. The City of St. Petersburg emailed City of St. Pete Beach staff that we have elevated chloride levels well above the rest of the system, specifically in our lift stations 4 and 5. And those two lift stations are located in our Paso Grill area and receive flow from everything south of 21st Avenue. So City of St. Petersburg, they routinely measure the chloride levels at our different lift stations, and as a result of that, they performed more targeted sampling within those hot spots that they identified in the Paso Grill area, and they recommend manholes to target for further sampling. In addition to evaluating our contract obligations with the City of St. Petersburg, we also wanted to evaluate how this impact of our I&I program impacts our city codes. So first off, with our comprehensive plan, and specifically on our infrastructure element 5, our goal number 1 is to provide necessary sanitary sewer services by a safe, efficient, and cost-effective system which maintains adequate facilities and provides for orderly growth and expansion. In order to achieve this goal, it's pretty evident that significant investment is needed. And then as it relates to our land development code, that's where we have our language which ties to concurrency. With that, moving forward, we plan to notify any applicants that are applying for site plans of the concentration levels in our system. And with that, we would be seeking guidance from the City of St. Petersburg on whether concurrency could be issued for those developments on a project-by-project basis. We're also evaluating our user connection fee for developments and proposed developments, and that's a component that's currently underway with our fee study. So I wanted to highlight a couple actions that the city is underway with to help address this program. Again, we've had this I&I program in our capital program for some time now. But as we saw on the previous slides, what we've invested and actually put forth in the ground hasn't matched what the recommendations are to get in compliance with industry standards. So first, which is a wastewater system cleaning and inspection program. This is one of the items that's on our agenda for approval tonight. That would be not to exceed $2 million a year to clean and inspect our pipes, laterals, and manholes. Some of the images shown on this slide here were pictures that were taken back from that previous 2017 study. So these are type of the issues that we plan on seeing from these inspections. On the far left is a disjointed pipe where the two pipes don't line up anymore. And the middle is where a franchise utility bored a line that punctured through our pipeline and caused an issue. And then the image on the far right is a grease buildup deposit, which inhibits the capacity of the system. And then the next major project that's going to help address our inflow and infiltration situation is continuing on our I&I program. This is a project that's on the books again, proposed for fiscal year 26. We're proposing just over $1.9 million, and this money would be used for the pipelining, the pipe repairs, and the manhole rehabs. Over 5 years, we're proposing $3.9 million. But this will be an ongoing program. I&I is something that we'll always target to address as our system ages. So our goal is in this 5 years to really tackle, especially in year 2026, to have a large impact. And then over the coming years, we will reduce that investment between years 2035 through 2042. We're recommending to reduce that investment to about $250,000 per year, and that's where we want to be, is where we're on top of our maintenance and we can keep this program manageable. In 2026, our goal is to target those hot spots that the City of St. Petersburg has helped us identify, and we also plan to coordinate with them regularly. We've established bi-weekly meetings with them. They have a great, helpful staff on board that's willing to provide resources to help us accomplish this goal. It's important to note the outer years of this program may be adjusted once we complete the cleaning and inspection this coming fiscal year. We'll adjust those outer years as needed if further priorities come to surface. And then, as I mentioned, the fee study is underway to help update that connection fees to offset some of the city's investment into this program. And with that, I'll open it up to any comments or questions.
Questions? Commissioner Robinson?
I'm just, I'm disturbed by this whole thing because I don't understand how and why this happened. We had the reports back in 2016, and what happened in 2021? Why were we not getting any reports from St. Petersburg back in 2021? What you're showing here is 2023. What happened to the communication prior to that?
I would have to do some more research. I have reached out to the City of St. Petersburg to see if they could provide some more background on what prior conversations have happened. But in my limited research, this is kind of what I could put together.
I know this kind of came about at you pretty quick, and as well as to everybody else as well. Although I must say that, you know, I brought up about 4 months ago a consent and a compliance order that the city was under, and whether we had we were in compliance with either of those for our sewer system, and never got an answer back on that, and that was 4 months ago. And that is the backbone of this that we're finding out right now. Because that said that there were things that we had to do. There was the studies that we had to do, hence we had the study by Kimley Horn done, and we found out that info. And I just don't understand, you know, what is the root cause analysis on this? How could this happen, and how can we prevent this from future happening?
I would say, you know, how we prevent this in the future from happening is doing the projects, you know, rehabbing our manholes, replacing the pipes, and lining them, and maintaining that and keeping up with that plan moving forward.
You know, this is before your time, before the city manager's time, but you know, there's been articles written in the paper about how poor our sewer system has been, and we've known this. The city has known this. Prior administrations have known this, and we need to make sure this doesn't happen again, and we need to make sure we take care of it. You know, and there needs to be some sort of investigation into the root cause of this. Who knew? Who all knew that this was going on in 2021? Why were we not doing the repairs necessary that we needed? Pinellas County was going to buy Treasure Island's sewer system from them and pay them to buy ours from us. We had to pay them. It's been a problem, and we're at a situation now where it's not about physical capacity, it's about functionality. And what can the city handle from a functionality standpoint? For all this development we're looking and all this extra density we're looking at adding. We've got more sea level rise, that's not going away. We're trying to combat that, but we've got basically a sewer system that's failing us. And I'd like to know who all knew about this. And I think the residents and everybody paying into this, that's going to end up paying for it one way or another, they deserve to know. In all transparency and all accountability, they need to know. So I'll go back and ask, are we in compliance with our consent order? And
Well, you were released from the consent order in July 19th of 2022 by DEP. The consent order that was signed in 2014, in case 14-0021, required a number of things. One of them was to conduct the I&I study by the end of fiscal year 2016 and agree to budget sufficient funds to complete the citywide inflow and infiltration study and capital improvements program to reduce ground and surface water intrusion. And it says, on or before June 1st and December 1st of each year, the consent order is in effect. The city shall submit to the department a written report concerning compliance with the consent order. One of the reasons that the consent order was issued is that we had unauthorized releases in November of 2013, October of 2013, and actually 3 times in November that we discharged wastewater from the collection system and didn't report it. And then the city staff met with the DEP staff to discuss these operational improvements, and we were supposed to notify of any spills, which I think we were doing. Within 180 days of the consent order, we had to submit an operation and maintenance policy to address unauthorized releases, environmental sampling, and public notification. We were supposed to complete rehabilitation of lift station number 2 by December 31st, 2015. By the end of fiscal year 2015, the respondent, the city, agrees to budget sufficient funds to complete a permitting and engineering necessary to completely replace pump station 3 and relocate force main number 3. And those projects were to be included in the 2016 budget and completed by December 31st, 2016. And then by December 31st, 2017, the respondent, the city, must investigate, draft, and implement a fats, oil, and grease ordinance. And also, in the event within 3 years of the effective date of this consent order, which was 2014 to 2017, the city must complete construction improvements and rehabilitation of the collection system to significantly reduce wastewater overflows. So we had a number of things that we were supposed to do, and DEP, I guess, found that we complied, and they released us from the consent order in 2022.
And as far as any of the utility companies drilling through our pipes, do we have a legal recourse on that?
Well, we have to fix those.
Yep.
And if we can find out who put it in, certainly we can notify them and see if we can sue them if we have to. Statute of limitations might apply, but it would depend on when we found out about it and if anything had been filed prior. So I'm not sure where that particular borehole occurred, but we could investigate that. It may happen in other locations. I think we'll find it when we do our television survey or video survey, right?
And we do find some of those too when we have emergency situations of blockages, and we go and we find those type of pipes that we'll track back and see when a right-of-way use permit was pulled to identify, you know, when that construction took place. Because a lot of times, you know, it may not turn surface, you know, for a couple of years.
Right.
But that is something that we do try to track down. We'll pull our locate tickets when we located before that franchise utility project, and then work with that company to recover those funds.
Because we just had a lot of boring done. Up and down, a lot of, I mean, I know, you know, up and down Gulf Winds and side streets as well. Everything for underground was bored. So it'll be interesting to see what else we find.
Commissioner Rusnicki?
Camden, just a question, because you said 2 million, again, to moving forward in plan, I know you're going to be televising all the pipes, but if we're allocating the 2 million, right, or 2.2, I forgot the exact number, do we have the funds being allocated so we can be repairing? Because we're just televising, so what additional funds? I think from one of your slides, it was like 1.9 that you needed just in a year-to-year budget to be able to repair as you find these things that are happening throughout the city. Are we in that position right now?
We are. In your proposed fiscal year 26 budget, we have a CIP project called Wastewater Collection System Improvements, and that's specific for I&I repairs.
Okay. So we would be falling somewhat in the plan that you were going through, to saying that every year what we needed financially to be able to address what we're televising and finding.
Correct. Yep. And in order to stay on top of that maintenance.
Okay. And is there anything that the city can do proactive so that when right-of-way permits are put in place, is there a way for the city, when those permits are closed, to be able to see or detect or inspect, or should we hire someone to inspect to make sure that something wasn't broken? You know, because once they close it, they're gone. And instead of waiting 2 to 3 years down the line to see what happens, when there's a good indicator that something could have happened, is there an easy way for someone to inspect it to determine if there is some kind of water spilling or whatever it may be?
That's, it's difficult to do on larger projects, say for instance if like Duke Energy is in doing a whole block or something. That would be harder to identify and trace back, because we would have to, you know, camera our entire system just to see if they potentially did hit something. That's not something that we have done in the past. If it's a right-of-way use permit associated with a specific project, they are supposed to televise their private sanitary line to show that the connection that they made to ours is sufficient, but that getting in place a better mechanism to track the impacts of the franchise utilities is something that we need to continue to work on.
Can we make a requirement for them to televise after they've done it, after they've done the work?
Well, they, I guess, like ask them to televise sewer that would be in the vicinity of their work.
Where they did their work.
I'm not sure if we have a nexus to draw to that, but we can look into that.
That way, you know, we're not trying to see if we meet the statute of limitation, right? If we're ahead of it, then, you know, we could sit here and think, okay, probably wasn't that because they've been televising after they've closed.
We could possibly include it in our RFPs. It'll probably be a cost that's passed on to us, obviously, in what the bids come in at. It's an additional task.
Thank you.
Commissioner Maldonado?
Yeah, so first of all, let me just say that thank you for your transparency, and it looks like you have a very robust action plan to deal with what is not a new problem. So as I see it, I&I goes back to 2013. It was brought up to the attention of staff. I'm more focused on the future as opposed to, you know, who to blame or what happened. And I am very much looking forward to this effort that you're making, and that we just need to stay on top of it. So that one of the big things is, as the other commissioners have expressed, is that we need to anticipate problems, and we need to get ahead of those. You know, whether it's inadvertent boring or whether we run into unexpected expenses, we need to budget for that, and we need to keep the public informed as we're moving forward with that. But thank you for your transparency. I know that you're taking this on. You haven't shirked responsibility, and I commend you for that. Thank you.
Cameron, I've got a couple questions for you. On the slide that has the flows per year, I believe, along with the chloride overlaid. Yep, there we go. I think on the previous charts about when the study was done, and it looked like a fair amount of money was spent in 2017 on the I&I program. And then in 2017, our total average daily flow dropped quite a bit. Am I making too much of a leap to assume that those two things had something to do with each other, that big relining or I&I project that happened in 2017 could have kept so much inflow out of the system that's why our average daily flow in 2018 is lower, or is that bad logic?
That very well could be a direct correlation. The essence of shoring up this system, getting rid of those leaks, would reduce the amount of groundwater and floodwaters that enter the system. So it would be logical that if we do address the I&I and rehab our pipes and manholes, that we would expect a reduction in flow.
In flow overall, okay. And thank you for laying this all out so clearly. I think that's very helpful, and I agree with Commissioner Maldonado. I think that, you know, our focus needs to be on where do we go from here? How do we fix this problem? How do we keep ourselves from getting back in this position again? And I think we have a start of a really reasonable plan. My only other thought was, if, you know, I don't know what percentage of the total system is private laterals from residences and businesses, but is there any kind of federal or county or state funding available for, you know, like matching grants for homeowners who want to replace their laterals? Or, I mean, you know, is there a way to attack that problem from a couple of directions so that, you know, because as a city we can only fix the city-owned pipes, and I'm sure those aren't. I'm certain that that's a lot of the problem, but I'm sure it's not the only problem.
Yeah, that's a good point. And as I mentioned, you know, the extent of those private sewer laterals is still an unknown at this point. With this upcoming sewer cleaning project, we are proposing in there's a line item to inspect those laterals as well, so we can get a good idea of what those laterals are, where they're at, and then we can get those plugged into our GIS system. Just a rough estimate, you know, if you assume 30 feet per lateral at 7,000 homes, that equates to about the length of our gravity system itself.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
it could be a pretty large portion.
Yep, okay.
Regarding the grants, that's something that we can research to see if there's grant opportunities to help out with those private laterals.
Perfect, thank you. Mayor, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I've got a few questions. So Camden, you're in a tough spot here, and I agree that we should focus on looking forward and how do we address this and how do we make sure that we don't repeat the mistakes of the past. And the way we're going to do that is by understanding how we got here. And so looking at the reports that you've provided, we had 65% on the first slide. Third slide of the presentation, 65% of the pipes needed rehabilitation. In your estimate, how much of that do you think was actually done?
There was a good portion of pipe lining done, especially in those initial years, 2017, 2018, as well as significant amount of manholes repaired. I can collect that data and come back and report that to you on where we're at as far as addressing that, at least that 2017 report.
Okay. Going on that, based on that slide that you provided where we have the I&I investment what was recommended versus what was actually spent. Looks like we've had significant shortfalls starting in year one. So it looks like year one we had a $623,000 shortfall. Am I reading that accurately?
That's correct. And as it's running through, it's adding up over time. So in 2018, we were, less than $100,000, but you can see relative to that prior year, it's just a cumulative running total. So yes, in 2017, we were started out in the hole.
So would I be reading that correctly to say that, let's say, going back to the lining, so you had 42% on the lining. Of that 42%, I'm assuming not all of it was done if we had a $600,000 shortfall the first year?
That's correct.
Okay. Same with the manholes, same with everything else. So we were told you need to do this much. We have 65% failure on one side, 42 the other, same with the manhole covers. And we did 50, 60, based on this, roughly maybe 70% of what was required. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes, sir. If you're matching up the dollar figures, of course, in the report, those were estimated costs. So, the actual repairs may have been more expensive or less than those estimated costs. But it kind of gives you a rough idea.
And you've been doing this for a while, so how often do you get projects that come in under budget?
Not very often.
Would you say it's closer to 0 or closer to 100?
Closer
Percent
to
of the time.
probably closer to 0% than 100%.
Yeah. There's a reason all of our contracts have a 10% overage allowance, right?
Correct. Yes, we like to bake in that contingency just for those unknowns and unforeseens.
Just going to help me understand, where did you get all this data from? I mean, you've got some very, very detailed information here. I mean, you're down to the pennies. Where's it all coming from? I've got pictures, I've got graphs, I've got overlays.
A lot of the pictures and graphs came from those prior studies, the 2017 report as well as the 2023 report. On this slide that you see with the I&I investment, that came from our budgets, so looking back at what was actually spent in those fiscal year budgets. And then again, those estimated costs were just taken from those two previous reports.
Okay, so you would say that, let's say, previous city managers, previous public works directors, they would have been aware of this information?
Yeah, I think that's
would it be reasonable to assume so? I'm not asking you to read their minds, but would it be reasonable that somebody in that position, because clearly St. Petersburg notified somebody, so who did they notify?
When they reached out to me last year just before the storms to schedule a meeting, that was my first time in correspondence with them. But yeah, I think that would be a reasonable assumption that the city knew this based on studying the previous reports. I would note the chloride level issue was not something that I've seen was specifically addressed in those previous studies. They were more towards the I&I holistically, but they didn't really pin into the pollutant levels. That was something that was brought up to us separately by the city of St. Petersburg.
Okay. So you have this timeline here. So November 23rd, who notified who of what? I think it's your 15th slide.
So in September of 24, that was when the city of St. Petersburg wastewater or department had contacted the St. Pete Beach Public Works Department in order to discuss that previous sampling that they did in January and February of 24. That contact was directly with me. We had a meeting scheduled that we canceled due to the hurricanes. We rescheduled that meeting in June, and that's when the chloride level data was first shared with me personally, and we evaluated and saw that we've been out of compliance here for some time. And then in August, is when we had a follow-up meeting with myself and our city manager, with the Public Works Director at the City of St. Petersburg, as well as their city administrator.
And then that January 24th and November 23rd?
The January 24th was based on staff within our department. They had shown some emails back and forth with the City of St. Petersburg. And then in consultation with staff, they advised that they think, prior to November 23 was the last email they had recorded, but they thought those discussions may have taken place previously.
Okay. So, again, I'm not an engineer. I don't think any of our city commissioners are wastewater engineers. So when we have this high of a level, like how do we get this high? Is this just simply a little extra water in the system? I mean, how do the levels get that high?
I think relative to the chloride concentration levels, it's really attributed to saltwater intrusion. So either the high groundwater tables, when we have our high tides putting extra pressure and leaking into that system, or when we have flooding events like we did from Helene, where we have storm surges and that salt water entering our environment. But we believe that chloride is directly associated with saltwater intrusion.
Mm-hmm. And so for them to be this high consistently, I'm assuming we're talking, you said they can't take our water most days. So this is not, hurricane was one day, right? That hurricane, that one day isn't going to contribute for high levels for every single day thereafter. So are you expecting to find massive catastrophic pipe failures, collapses, or is it just a little bit of water trickling into the system? What are we looking at here?
I think it's a combination of both. I mean, I&I is a system-wide, citywide program, but I do think the saltwater intrusion specifically is probably targeted to some specific hotspots within that Paso Grill area. That's something that we're going to continue to study further, especially in our consultation with the City of St. Petersburg. But in the conversations that I've had, we do think there is some hot spots that are significant or contributing more than some of the other manholes. When they did their testing back in January to see that those lift stations 4 and 5 were elevated, they came back in February and targeted some specific manholes, and it does look like some manholes are contributing more than others. So I think in this first year in 2026, I think we're going to be able to hit some of those hot spots that should make a significant improvement.
Okay, and one last question here. So I know our next item on the agenda is going to be talking about this $2 million contract. Just so that we're on the same page, I know we haven't gotten to the contract, but the contract is for inspecting and cleaning, right? And it doesn't actually include fixing, so we don't really know what we will find, right? So this is just inspections and some rudimentary cleaning that we're not talking lining, we're not talking manhole covers, we're not talking fixing collapses or anything else, right? Or
that's correct. Yeah, the contract brought forward tonight is just specifically for the inspection and cleaning. The actual repairs and rehabilitation will be handled through separate contracts. Currently, the city has a contract in place for the structural point repairs, and we also have a contract in place for the manhole rehabilitations. Those were contracts that we just recently had extended. What we don't have in place currently is the pipe lining contract, and that's something that we will put out to bid and bring forth to commission for approval at a future meeting.
Okay. Camden, I appreciate it. I appreciate it very much. I appreciate you actually answering these questions straightforward without trying to beat around the bush and trying to give us a clear and accurate picture so that we can make solid decisions based on actual factual data so that we can move forward with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Camden. And I think that leads us Do we go to immediately to 6A, or should we have general audience comments for 6A? Okay. So I think you're back up.
Thank you. For the record, Camden Mills. I didn't have a specific presentation prepared for this item, but I would like to note that the city did advertise publicly a request for proposals for a qualified contractor to perform sewer cleaning and inspections throughout the city. We received 4 responsive sealed bids back in August, and Roland Incorporated was determined to be the lowest and responsive bidder that met all the city's qualification requirements. This proposed contract provides a not-to-exceed unit prices for the sewer system cleaning inspection, including pipe cleaning and television inspection, specialty cleaning, which could include cutting out tree roots and grease removal, the manhole inspections, any bypass pumping that's required in order to perform those inspections, the private sewer lateral cleaning and inspections, and then also has an ultimate bid item in there for artificial intelligence platform and licensing. This contract we do plan on implementing, if approved, for a citywide cleaning, and it would be in place for 3 years with 2 options for 1-year extensions. So we would continue to use the unit prices on this contract for the foreseeable future. The contract deliverables associated with this, again, would be used to analyze the current conditions of our system, so we can compare it to those previous reports and reprioritize. It'll also be used to update the city's GIS asset inventory, so we can improve our asset management. And then, again, most importantly, be able to prioritize future wastewater repairs and replacements. We do have proposed funding in our fiscal year 26 CIP for this project in the amount of $2 million. So that's why we set the contract with a not-to-exceed limit for that amount.
All right, any questions?
Does that include televising as
Yes.
well as part of the whole inspection process?
Yep.
Okay. That was it.
All right.
Thank you.
Do we have any public comment?
There are no public comments on this topic.
Do we have a motion?
I motion to authorize the city manager to execute a services agreement with Roland Inc. for sewer system cleaning and inspection services in the amount not to exceed $2 million annually.
I second.
Commissioner Robinson?
Yes.
Commissioner Rosnicki?
Yes.
Commissioner Maldonado?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Marriott?
Yes?
And Mayor Petrilla?
Yes.
The motion carries.
All right. I think we're finally to general comments. Do we have any general public comment?
George Smith?
Thank you, sir. Please state your name and address for the
Good
record.
evening. George Smith, 5940 Bimini Way North. I wanted to talk about a couple of things here. The amendments to the regulations for elevating homes. In general, I'm in favor of what the staff has put together, but there were a couple of commission comments that concern me a little bit. One of those is, I believe I heard somebody suggesting that those regulations could be extended to new construction as well, and that's not a good idea whatsoever. Builders and homeowners are going to abuse that, and if, you're just changing the whole regulation, the whole plan that the city's gone with for a long time if you do that. So I think that the new construction needs to stay as is. In addition, there was a comment about storage sheds, and if you elevate a home or build up on the second level, you're going to pick up a whole lot of space underneath, and I don't see any reason to have a crappy shed sitting outside that gets washed away and into your neighbor's yard next time a hurricane comes through. So those are my 2 comments about that. The other comment I have is regarding the stormwater infiltration, and I can't tell you how many times I've seen cleanouts on PVC pipes cut off by lawn maintenance companies. And so maybe a public awareness that if they see something like that, to bring it up and report it, because when you have a situation like that, You're going to have water flowing in there anytime that somebody's sprinkling. All the rainwater runoff goes in there, and it won't have a huge effect on the chloride levels, except when you have a flood situation. But in that situation, you're just dumping stormwater right down that pipe. And so maybe a community information program to let people know would be good. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no further comments.
Okay. All right, on to the consent agenda. And unless there's any specific discussion, we can have a
I
motion.
just wanted to make a comment, not to discuss anything in particular, just because there's so many contracts on engineers or engineering contracts. And when you look at all the packets, and I don't know if it was a lot, but that hopefully as a city, I saw so many interesting projects in the qualifications for a lot of these engineers in different cities throughout Florida, whether it was on stormwater, shoreline, strengthening, stabilization. I think that's the word we're using now, right? There are so many examples out there, and some people who were actually, like Cummings is one that I know I've been working with for shoreline stabilization in the Don Cesar, and some engineers that have been in the city before, that I hope that this is something that it's a huge resource of being able to get some great ideas of what potentially could be working in other communities before we invest so much money on the conceptuals, let me just say that way, that there might be some cities right now that have had something that was successful for over a period of years, that hopefully with this big group of engineers that Camden you're going to have to your disposal, that we can be picking their wealth of knowledge and expertise to help improve this city of St. Pete Beach. That's it.
All right, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Make the motion to approve the September 8, 2025 budget and regular commission meeting.
A second.
Just to be clear, you mentioned just the first item on the consent agenda?
Oh, yeah.
Correct.
You're not approving the rest of the consent agenda?
We can do the whole thing all together.
Okay.
Yeah.
In its entirety.
There we go.
I second the entirety.
A through Q.
Commissioner Ruznicki?
Yes.
Commissioner Maldonado?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Marriott?
Yes.
Commissioner Robinson?
Yes.
And Mayor Petrilla?
Yes.
The motion carries.
All right, so on to ordinances. I think we're finally to the millage rate, correct?
Yes. 1 second. Ordinance 2025-18, an ordinance of the City of St. Pete Beach, Florida, establishing the millage rate for fiscal year 2026, beginning October 1st, 2025, and ending September 30th, 2026, providing and announcing the name of the taxing authority, the rolled back millage rate, the percentage increase over the rolled back millage rate, and the millage rate to be levied, providing for reading in its entirety, and providing for an effective date. And because it says providing for reading in its entirety, I will read the rest of the resolution, if you'll bear with me. Whereas Florida Statutes Section 200.065 requires the adoption of the millage rate by separate vote prior to adoption of the annual budget. Whereas Florida Statutes Section 200.065 requires that prior to adoption of the millage levy ordinance, the following be publicly announced: the name of the taxing authority, the rollback millage rate, the percentage increase over the rollback millage rate, and the millage rate to be levied. Whereas in no event may the millage rate adopted exceed the millage rate tentatively adopted. Now therefore, the City Commission of the City of St. Pete Beach, Florida hereby ordains, Section 1, the name of this taxing authority is the City of St. Pete Beach. Section 2, the rolled back millage rate for the fiscal year 2026 is 3.1189. Section 3, The fiscal year 2026 proposed millage rate is 0.8889% lower than the rolled back rate, or $140,229 in ad valorem revenue. Section 4. The millage rate to be levied for fiscal year 2026 shall be 3.0913 mils per $1,000 of taxable value. Section 5. This ordinance shall take effect immediately upon final adoption.
All right, so this is our second reading. Nothing has changed since our last meeting. It's exactly the same. Any discussion or questions that anyone has? All right. So we just need a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve ordinance 2025-18, establishing the millage rate as 3.0913 mils for fiscal year 2026.
Second.
Commissioner Maldonado,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Marriott,
Yes.
Commissioner Robinson,
Yes.
Commissioner Ruznicki,
Yes.
and Mayor Petrilla.
Yes.
The motion carries.
All right, and so now we have our final reading of ordinance 2025-19, adopting the budget.
Ordinance 2025-19, an ordinance of the City of St. Pete Beach, Florida, adopting the budget for fiscal year 2026, beginning October 1st, 2025, and ending September 30th, 2026, providing for the incorporation of the adopted capital budget as the capital improvement element of the comprehensive plan, providing for reading in its entirety, and providing for an effective date. Whereas Florida Statute Section 166.241 requires the adoption of a budget each fiscal year. Whereas the amount available from taxation and other sources, including balances brought forward from prior years, must equal the total appropriations for expenditures and reserves. Whereas the adopted budget must show for each fund, as required by law and sound financial practices, budgeted revenues and expenditures by organizational unit, which are at least at the level of detail required for the annual financial report required under Florida Statute Section 218.32, Parent 1. Whereas the adopted budget must regulate expenditures of the municipality, and an officer of the municipal government may not expend or contract for expenditures in any fiscal year except as pursuant to the adopted budget. And whereas the City of St. Pete Beach fiscal year 2026 budget is balanced, is presented at the level of detail required to file the annual financial report, and shall regulate the expenditures of the city for the period beginning October 1st, 2025, and ending September 30th, 2026. Now therefore the City Commission of the City of St. Pete Beach, Florida hereby ordains, Section 1, the fiscal year 2026 budget document attached as Exhibit A, the budget, is adopted by reference and made part of this ordinance. Section 2, upon adoption of the budget, the capital improvement element of the city's comprehensive plan is hereby updated to reflect the fiscal year 2026 through fiscal year 2030 capital improvement plan. Section 3, this ordinance shall take effect immediately upon final adoption.
All right, so same as the last one. This is our second reading. Nothing's changed. Any questions, discussion, comments?
No.
No? All right, so we just need a motion.
I make a motion to approve the final reading of ordinance 2025-19, adopting the budget for fiscal year 2026.
I second.
Vice Mayor Marriott,
Yes.
Commissioner Robinson,
Yes.
Commissioner Ruznicki,
Yes.
Commissioner Maldonado,
Yes.
and Mayor Petrilla.
Yes.
The motion carries.
All right, and then moving on to our final reading of the night, ordinance 2025-17, specifying elevation requirements for replacement of flood damaged equipment. And this also is unchanged, correct?
Yes, Brandon will, or Laura will present. I'll read the title of the ordinance. An ordinance of the City of St. Pete Beach, Florida, for the purpose of amending Code of Ordinances, Chapter 98, Buildings and Building Regulation, to specify minimum elevation standards for replacement of flood-damaged exterior equipment and appliances not associated with a substantially improved or damaged building, providing for codification, conflict severability, correction of scrivener's errors, construction, publication, and an effective date.
Good evening, Laura Canary, Community Development Director. Nothing has changed. This is the second reading. The only thing I think that's worth mentioning is we have given a commitment to the state. Once they gave us the green light to go ahead and move forward with this, we've given them a commitment that we're going to be looking at the code as a whole and kind of the floodplain regulations and just making sure that we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's if there's anything else that needs to come forward, and back to you all.
Thank you. Any comments? Questions? Do we have any public comment on this one?
There are no public comments.
No public comments? Okay. All right, so I think we just need a motion.
Motion to adopt ordinance 2025-17.
I'll second.
Commissioner Robinson?
Yes.
Commissioner Rosnicki?
Yes.
Commissioner Maldonado?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Marriott?
Yes.
And Mayor Petrilla?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, so we're on to items for discussion. Commissioner Robinson.
I wanted to bring up backfill. It's come up a couple times in regards to, there are folks that are out there building their homes, and there's some concerns about with how much they're allowed to do as far as backfill at 16 inches over the grade of the road. And it puts different people at different degrees, and the problem seems to be there are folks that are still having their garages being in a situation where they get flooded. And we're looking at being resilient, and we're looking at affording people the opportunity to do this, and there are precautions such as swells and doing the knee walls and things of that effect to prevent basically the whole idea of being don't flood your neighbor. And in some areas, this may be, it's just a bit of overkill for some of the neighborhoods where everybody's on the water. And if everybody's on the water, they're all going to get the same amount of water. And especially if you're going, like I said, you do knee walls, you do preventative items for that. I just think it's something that needs to be looked at. I know Treasure Island is addressing it. There's other communities addressing it, and I believe it deserves a look at, and it might be an outdated code that we need to look at.
You know, isn't this something that the city's looking at? I mean, I know we brought this up already. Aren't we looking into this already? And not received like a report back.
Yeah, I spoke with staff today about this topic, and we have not started any significant research. It is a very complex issue in the context of, to be done right, you need to have studies. It's beyond the capacity of staff. We would need to bring someone in to help us with this type of project. So I would just ask the commission to possibly consider adding this to the list of items to discuss at your upcoming priority work session check-in, which is tracking towards December as promised, and really contextually tell us where you would like to, how you want staff to prioritize, because we would have to go get outside resources for this kind of endeavor.
Can we piggyback off of anything that Treasure Island or other communities have done and look at their research? Or you're saying it's indicative to our community?
I don't have a planner here. I would say it's going to be indicative to the community, the neighborhood.
Well,
they're going to have to look at.
The elevation rise would be, but the overall concept wouldn't be.
I think Treasure Island is still wrestling with this issue, so maybe if they resolve it, then we can take a look at them as a model and use that perhaps.
They are struggling with it as a community, so I think I would want to be just very thoughtful on how we approach it, which means the correct level of effort. I wouldn't want to try to do it quickly or?
Okay. I just wanted to bring it up because it is coming up again and again.
So I'll have staff add it to our list. You know, we started a running list, but we've sort of been responding in real time, but this is one of them, one of the topics that I think this would require quite a bit of community outreach and time. So we just want to make sure we're putting it in order of priority of how you would like us to approach it with the other things going on. All right. All right, reports, City Clerk.
I have nothing to report this evening.
City Manager?
Thank you. I have two announcements this evening. First of all, we have a free concert series at Haram Park, starting with our first kickoff on Friday, October 3rd, 7 to 9 p.m. We will have the band China Grove with special guests Supernatural, the Ultimate Doobie Brothers, and Santana Tribute bands. Hot dogs and burgers will be sold by the St. Pete Beach Fire Rescue, and beer and wine will be sold by the Tampa Bay Beaches Chamber of Commerce. It's free to attend. Pets must be on leashes, and outside food and drinks will be allowed, just no glass, please. So invite all the community to come on over. And then Code Enforcement has been working on a project called the Code Enforcement Corner, which is supporting a Education First initiative. So we've been talking a lot about how we would approach code enforcement in the community from a proactive standpoint versus just reactive. And they're going to be starting a monthly educational spotlight on social media that highlights common code enforcement topics for our community. The goal of this program will be to inform residents about the why behind our codes, encourage voluntary compliance, and reduce the need for enforcement activities. In fact, one of the metrics we're looking at right now is, can we reduce the number of times we show up to the special magistrate? That's our ultimate goal. Each month, they're going to focus on 1 to 2 specific issues. For October, we're focusing on overgrown vegetation and trash and debris so that residents clearly understand expectations and the resources available to them. We are going to be reintroducing the purpose of our hang tags. So this is colorful. So if you see one, don't get scared because it's a courtesy notice. So they're going to be meant to be a friendly way to let people know what they need to do to come into compliance. They're easy to spot and clear and simple to explain the exact concern on the property. Also have the phone number and email listed on them twice. And just want to say for the record, if you have questions, please call Jen in Code Enforcement. She is our main contact with the community. When they call in at 727-748-1122, we are really here to help. So we're looking forward to the community's feedback on this new approach. Thank you. End of report.
Can I ask you one question? Because I think it's such a great idea to do that, the little kind of helping people educate, what's going on. Waste is one thing that just popped in my mind, because looking at all the C-click fixes that I've been seeing in District 3, a lot of people are talking about like the piles of debris that are on the side of the road. Another learning that some people don't realize is that WSI, or Waste Services, is not going to collect debris that's just piled up in a pile. Controns and so forth need to be either put bundled or in a trash bin. So is that going to detect that? Because I know in my area in District 3, we've been seeing piles, which residents have come to me, piles of debris on the side of the road, but it's because they're not going to pick it up the way that it's put out.
I can certainly
just
talk to
something
the
to
team
add.
and see how we promote,
Make sure
how
it's
to
coincide.
get it ready for pickup.
Right.
Yeah, and I think it's confusing to some people because the trash service used to pick all of that up. A few years ago, you could pile anything in as big a pile as you wanted and they'd pick it up, which was amazing, but they don't do it anymore. So, yeah.
Thank you.
All right, City Attorney.
Nothing this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. District 4.
Just a couple things to pass on. I'll be hosting Cookies with the Commissioner this coming Saturday from 9 to 10 a.m. at Vina Del Mar Park. And then my next community engagement meeting will be on 6 October from 6 to 7 p.m. at the Warren Webster Community Activity Center in Passive Grill, and our city manager will be joining us. So happy to have her out there with us so folks can engage with her directly. That's all I have. Thank you.
District 3?
Just a reminder of the next meetings for District 3. Bella Vista has their neighborhood meeting October 9th at 7 p.m. at Triangle Park. And then the Don Cesar neighborhood subdivision is doing their November. It's not a meeting, it's actually a celebration, so don't expect a meeting. But the 100th year anniversary celebration at the Don Cesar Hotel at 4 p.m. Inviting the community meeting. Go to their website because there is a cost to going to this event. They're going to have things offered to those who attend. So, thank you.
District 2?
Just wanted to say two things. I had to change my library hours on October 7th to now be October 1st. I apologize to anybody that would inconvenience. Again, it'll be October 1st, not October 7th. Again, time frame is 5 to 5:45 p.m. In the meantime, this week, I have a resident in the Bayside Addition area holding a bit of a open house for me to speak and discuss with the residents there Corey Landings and the impacts that will have on that Bayside, Gulf Winds, and all the adjacent streets for ingress and egress for that development. And if you're interested in coming or attending, please call my cell phone number that's listed on the website. And again, it will be 5 p.m. this Wednesday.
Thank you. I have nothing to report. I've been a little under the weather for the last couple of weeks, so I apologize for not having any meetings available. My only report is you can get a shingles vaccine at Walgreens, so if you haven't gotten one, go get one. Mayor, do you have anything?
Thank you. Nothing at this time.
All right. Thank you all very much. We're adjourned.